Hello everyone. Our topic this week was requested by all of these lovely people. We'll be going over Strife from the Darksiders franchise. Spoilers for the Darksiders franchise. Le deux.
So, Strife is one of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, the Riders of the Charred Council. He is also far and away the most enigmatic of the Horsemen, as while he is one of the playable characters in Darksiders Genesis, the other being his brother War, Strife is the only one of the Horsemen yet to have received his own standalone game. Though the last two games did well commercially, so fingers crossed for one sometime in the future, as was originally planned. That being said, in addition to his place in Genesis, Strife has made minor appearances in other Darksiders media, appearing in the novel, Darksiders 3, and though he is only mentioned in passing in both Darksiders 1 and 2, both of his guns end up in the hands of the protagonists of those games as well. Like each of his brother and sister horsemen, Strife is a Nephilim, a being made of the mingled essences of both angel and demon. Consequently, as the Nephilim were a race of marauders, Strife is a consummate warrior. Like Fury, he is shown to have at best only mild levels of super strength, at least when compared to War and Death. But he is exceptionally agile and durable, seeming to rely on speed and precision rather than brute force.
Strife is also the only member of the Four Horsemen to favor ranged weaponry, preferring to dual-wield a set of pistols, Mercy and Redemption, though he also carries a dual set of curved short blades as backups. Keeping in mind that Strife's primary arsenal has been seen in 3 separate games, the mechanics of how these weapons work is somewhat questionable. In Darksiders 1, War acquires Mercy, a large, black, very modern-looking, technically revolver that is blessed with unending ammunition. It fires at a steady rate and never needs to be reloaded. Conceptually, it can fire continuously for eternity. In Darksiders 2, Death acquires Redemption, a more classically recognizable revolver. Redemption's ammunition regenerates, but at a much slower rate than Mercy, with a slight delay in the replenishment of its ammunition if there are still bullets in the chamber, and a longer delay should the entire cylinder be emptied. The trade-off is that Redemption seems to do more damage per shot than Mercy, and it has a variable firing rate, shooting off as quickly or as slowly as Death pulls the trigger. In Darksiders Genesis, though, Strife wields both pistols simultaneously, and he never seems to need to reload either weapon when using standard ammunition, nor is there any effective difference in their stopping power. However, Strife can acquire numerous types of special ammunition throughout the game, which are finite resources and need to be replenished repeatedly as the game goes on. These special ammo types are all clearly at least quasi-magical, with effects ranging from explosive sticky ammunition to generating a chain lightning effect, a shotgun-like ammo spread that generates healing orbs, and several more. Whether the difference in the baseline functionality of Mercy and Redemption between Genesis and Darksiders 1 and 2 is simply a mechanical change, or is indicative of the weapons functioning more effectively in the hands of their owner, is unknown.
Like the rest of the Horsemen, Strife also possesses at least minor mystical capabilities. He is able to generate shadowy clones that fire real damaging ammunition, produce caltrops that double as proxy mines, and fire off an enormous blast of energy that is great for mowing down hordes of smaller enemies. I love it. He also seems to possess the ability either to shapeshift or conceal himself behind minor illusions, as for most of Darksiders 3 he runs around in the guise of a normal human. Though it is very possible this ability is from some sort of item rather than being an innate skill of his own. Strife's most potent ability, however, as with all of the Horsemen, is his super form, called the Anarchy form. Strife transforms into a towering but lithe armored creature with a Gatling gun for one of his arms and a tail-like spinal projection that protrudes from his upper back area that ends in a wicked spiked tip. While in this form, Strife is immune to all damage and can fire his Gatling gun for obscene single target damage, again endless ammo, he can fire as long as the form lasts, or pull the tail above his head, firing a giant laser down on targeted enemies, while simultaneously firing rockets from hidden shoulder launchers, which track enemy targets and explode, doing incredible damage to just about everything on screen, though less damage than his single target gun, also with endless ammunition.
Strife's story begins with the Nephilim. Created by the demon Lilith, the Nephilim stormed across creation, torching countless worlds in a great march of conquest, supposedly looking for a home. Sometime along the way, 4 members of their race grew tired of the endless butchery, beginning to see that their people were a threat to the balance of creation itself. So they went to the Charred Council, a powerful mystical body that acts as the arbiters of said universal balance. In exchange for incredible power, their superforms are confirmed to come from the Council, for example, the 4 Nephilim, Death, War, Fury, and Strife, would become the 4 Horsemen, enforcers of the Council's will and executors of the Council's judgment. The Nephilim had discovered that the Garden World of Eden had been gifted to the fledgling race of mankind, and decided they wanted wanted to take it for themselves. This, combined with their previous crimes, led to the Horsemen's first official mission, the complete destruction of the entire Nephilim race. Before departing on this mission, the Horsemen first acquired their mounts, spirit horses, powerful mystical creatures that bind to a rider they deem worthy and take on a form suiting the soul and temperament of their rider. Strife named his steed Mayhem, a large beast covered head to hoof in armored plates, not unlike Strife himself, who wears a streamlined but fully body-covering suit of armor.
Blazing a trail of carnage on their mounts, the Four Horsemen slaughtered their entire species on the fields of Eden. None but the Horsemen, and arguably Absalom, the first Nephilim, survived, though death would kill Absalom permanently millennia later during Darksiders 2. The destruction wrought during the battle was so fierce that Eden was no longer considered habitable for humanity, and they were instead moved to Earth. These events are important not just for how they would shape the Horsemen themselves, but because they would also directly lead to the events of Darksiders Genesis, which takes place very shortly after the Nephilim Massacre at Eden. The exact time frame is unclear, but regardless, the game takes place soon enough after the massacre that the psychological wounds borne by the Horsemen as a result of the event are still fresh. Lilith, the creator of the Nephilim, was furious at the destruction of presumably her favorite creations, and sought vengeance against the Council and the Horsemen for their actions. However, the Council, and by extension their enforcers, were untouchable, so instead she fixated on humanity, deciding that since she couldn't hurt the Council directly, she'd corrupt the race they'd deemed worthy of destroying her precious Nephilim in order to protect. To that end, she sought the aid of her fellow demon lords, turning first to Samael, a reoccurring demon from the franchise, considered to be second in power only to Lucifer himself. When he turned her down, he makes it a point to not get in the Council's way. Lilith instead turned to Lucifer, Lord of the Demons himself, for aid. Working together, the two hatched a plot to create a device known as the Animus, which, when complete, would corrupt the souls of humanity, either instilling into them or intensifying the already existing attributes of greed, rage, lust, etc., all of those negative emotions we strive to control.
To power the Animus, though, they needed the souls of powerful demons, so they contacted 5 demon lords, Samael, Mammon, Belial, Dagon, and Moloch, and made each of them an offer. Lucifer would grant each of them some combination of items, power, or land, all of which would increase their status and survivability, and in exchange, each of these demon lords would give their soul to Lucifer upon their death. The genius of this plan was twofold. First, the gifts Lucifer offered each of the demon lords would appear on paper to make it less likely that they'd ever die, and thus less likely that they'd ever have to pay their souls to him. Second, the very nature of this plan meant that the Council would eventually step in, and that Lucifer's so-called partners would die as a result. As long as everyone acted just like they normally would, his success was assured. Samael was the only known demon to have been contacted that turned Lucifer's offer down. Again, he seemed to make it a point not to piss off the Council, and like Lucifer, he knew this plan would do just that. Samael aside, though, everyone else played their part. The Council eventually caught wind of Lucifer planning something that would negatively impact humanity. So, they sent War and Strife to look into the situation and kill everyone involved, which, presumably unknown to them, was exactly what Lucifer wanted.
War and Strife were dispatched to Hell and told, ironically, to seek Samael out first, as the Council claimed to believe that he was involved. When they arrived at Samael's doorstep, the Horsemen found him under attack by Moloch, who had taken Lucifer's deal and was using his newfound power to oust his competitors, Samael included. Sami informed the Horsemen that he wasn't involved in Lucifer's plot, but that further discussion would have to wait, as he was currently being sieged, and sent them to Vulgrim, a demon merchant who appears in every game in the series and is an on-again, off-again associate of Samael's, the Horsemen, and probably just about anyone willing to pay him for goods or information. Strife and War catch Vulgrim up to speed on the situation, and he offers to help them on a tit-for-tat basis, starting with having the Horsemen retrieve a crystal of his that Lucifer had stolen. When they retrieved it, leaving a mountain of demon corpses behind, it was revealed that the crystal was a prison for Dis, another demon merchant whose soul Vulgrim owned and who'd been caught by Lucifer when Vulgrim had sent her to snoop into his affairs. Before being caught, though, she'd learned what she'd gone to find out: the location of an object known as the Ember Core, a relic said to contain the power of 1,000 suns. Vulgrim promised the two horsemen that with both the Ember Core and another object known as a Scrying Eye, he would be able to track anyone, anywhere, including Lucifer himself. So the horsemen tracked down the two items, gave them to Vulgrim, and then, with the aid of Vulgrim, the Eye, and Samael, who eventually joined them and, despite knowing what would happen if the Demon Lords died, encouraged Strife and War on their mission of death and destruction, since the Lords were, after all, his rivals, and he was technically helping. So all was good, as far as he was concerned. Began tracking down the Demon Lords Lucifer had worked with, in an effort to locate Lucifer himself.
First, they tracked down Mammon, who had been gifted powerful artifacts by Lucifer in exchange for his soul. The horsemen recognized the artifacts he wielded in battle against them as being from Eden, which had been sealed off after the massacre, which should have made their being in Mammon's possession impossible, leading them to realize that Lucifer had somehow gained access to Eden. They further uncovered his plans once they tracked down Belial, who'd been gifted an entire realm in Hell to call his own, as well as a portal directly to Eden itself, from which Belial was siphoning Eden's, evidently magical, water, in order to form an incredibly potent acid/poison substance, which, in addition to being weaponized for Lucifer, Belial was fleeting upon to gain strength. Belial was the only demon lord the horsemen didn't kill. Instead, he bartered away the key to the Eden portal in exchange for his life, though death would kill him millennia later in his own game. When Strife and War used the key and traveled to Eden, a lot of the emotional and historical turmoil they'd been dealing with throughout the course of the game comes to a head.
As the game progresses, War and Strife banter back and forth, with discussions ranging from serious to jovial. Through all of these interactions, we learn three major things about Strife. First, he's been around. At least half of the time when they encounter someone or something important, both War and Strife know who or what is being talked about. However, if there's ever any explaining to be done, Strife is the one doing it. He recognizes the names of the demons and powerful artifacts that War has never encountered or heard of, inferring that in addition to being older than War, Strife is very well traveled and informed. Second, he is unhappy with having committed genocide on his own people and is distrustful of the Council. Not really that surprising, but it is something we learned. He and War have several discussions about whether what they did was right, or whether it being right or wrong even mattered, whether the Council can be trusted or whether they're just being used. He's the best kind of agent, the kind that does as he's told but thinks and questions why. Third, we learn that prior to joining the Horsemen, Strife was a killer, the kind that reveled in the blood of his enemies. It's even inferred that he was some kind of hitman or assassin, but that he regrets those days, those actions. He seems to revel in battle during the game as well, but he gives off the impression that killing just to butcher something isn't necessarily his style anymore. Though he does get real trigger happy around the Demon Lords.
Okay, you almost had me. Brother, wait! We could have questioned him.
Oh, right. You better answer quick before you serve your fat ass up some dessert. Start talking, you little shit. We might spare your miserable life.
Lucifer's shown me treasures beyond any that exist in this world. Your threats mean nothing.
Guess you didn't feel like talking. Too bad.
You wouldn't have spared him either way.
Yeah, figured it was worth a try.
So take our analysis with a grain of salt.
As War and Strife deal with these revelations, War too eventually admitting that he was not at all certain what they did to their people was right, despite his initial stoicism on the subject, they come to Eden. There, not only are they once more exposed to the devastation they'd wrought, they find that Lucifer had indeed been there, and in addition to all of his other plans, was corrupting the angels garrisoned on Eden, for reasons never really explained, except perhaps failing to keep things out of Eden, we guess. One of whom, an angelic lieutenant named Astarte, even necromantically raised the dead Nephilim to do battle with the Horsemen, which pissed them off to no end. Eventually, they killed Astarte, helped cleanse the source of Lucifer's corruption on Eden, sealed off the portal, and slew Dagon, the next of Lucifer's demons, who had been gifted Eden itself as his new realm, which he planned to flood and turn into an aquatic base of operations. Which finally left him with only Moloch, whose gift from Lucifer was an artifact that granted him nigh invulnerability. The Horsemen destroyed the artifact, then slew Moloch himself, who, with his dying breath, revealed that the Horsemen had been played. Samael afterward divulged the entirety of Lucifer's plan, and horrified, the Horsemen raced to Earth, but were too late to stop the Animus' activation. Despite killing the humans that were presumably in the immediate area of the Animus' deployment, the Horsemen failed to stop the spread of Lucifer's corruption, leading to the bloody history we know today. In the aftermath, the Charred Council forced a truce between heaven and hell, and decreed that none would ever again interfere with humanity until they'd grown to a strength that would match that of heaven and hell. This truce was sealed with 7 magical seals, the last of which would summon the Horsemen themselves to the apocalypse to punish the guilty.
Strife's next appearance, though brief, was in the Abomination Vault novel. It's worth noting that the book and comics are considered at best quasi-canon, with any information coming from them that conflicts with the games being rendered non-canon. The book picks up after Death comes back from a 500-year hiatus. He's thrown directly into a plot by the book's antagonists to uncover and utilize the Grand Abominations, WMDs created by the Nephilim from the very bodies and souls of one of the first races they had annihilated, a process that was Death's brainchild. The rest of the Horsemen, Strife included, had been unaware of the Grand Abomination's existence, and Death had locked away every one of them he could find in a place no one else, not even the Council, knew about after slaying their people. Strife and the others were present when Death informed the Council of all of this, Strife snarking throughout the briefing, as seems to be his way.
When the meeting was over, the Council decreed that all 4 of the Horsemen were to pursue their quarry on this matter, but once they were alone, Death, eldest, most powerful, and leader of the Horsemen, told the other 3 to stay behind. All 3 of course balked at this, but Strife in particular seemed agitated, demanding to know what gave Death the right to waltz back in after being gone for half a millennium, and just assume that things would go back to normal, with a slight inference pointing to the possibility that Strife may have taken up leadership in Death's absence, though we have no proof of this. Death's reply was simply to walk right up to the gun Strife had pointed at his face, stare Strife in the eyes, and ask Strife who was going to tell Death that things weren't going to go back to normal. War disobeys orders and sneaks after Death, but Strife and Fury aren't seen for the rest of the book, though they are mentioned as being dispatched to handle an attack made by the book's antagonists off-screen.
Strife's final appearance is in Darksiders 3. The game stars Fury, who, as the game progresses, encounters the remains of humanity on a ruined Earth. The game takes place after the apocalypse has already occurred, eventually ending up with her helping and protecting the remaining humans. For unknown reasons, Strife disguised himself as a human named Jones and was found amongst the survivors, keeping the secret of his identity from Fury and presumably everyone else? We'll think? Throughout the game, he questions and challenges Fury, confronting her beliefs and asking her to think about the situation, about the Council, about what she believes to be true. The Horsemen in general, and Fury and War in particular, were being lied to all over the place by the Council. He finally reveals himself at the game's climax. As Fury ushers humanity to safety through a portal, the demons that had made Earth their home had launched an attack to wipe them out. In order to give the humans time to escape, a group of makers who had been acting as humanity's guardians since the apocalypse occurred, and Strife himself stood their ground and fought the oncoming waves, with Strife revealing his identity only moments before the portal closed, taking Fury with it. He has his guns here, so we don't know how or when this happens, but somehow, presumably after this confrontation with the demons, Strife loses both of his guns. Whether this means he dies, has them stolen, or is simply forced to leave them for some reason is unknown. However, presumably shortly thereafter, Death is given the gun redemption by a friendly maker on a different world, mind you.
In the meantime, take this. It might be of use.
This pistol. It belongs to my brother, Strife. How came it here?
And about 90 years later, War is given Mercy, or possibly a copy of Mercy, by one of the makers who stood with Strife on Earth. Then, at the end of Darksiders 1, the seventh seal is crushed, reviving War and calling all of the other Horsemen, Strife included, from wherever they were and whatever they were doing, to stand with him one final time.
Hold fast, brother!
You ever get tired of endlessly slaughtering hordes? And hordes of demons?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
And that's basically Strife, rider of the White Horse. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like and maybe share it with someone you know might like it. If you have ideas for videos you'd like to see in the future, do like all of these lovely people, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore, let's play, or other, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons, signing off. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like it, hit this subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, go to the link on the left.
And for a video chosen by the gods of YouTube from our channel, hit that link on top.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.